Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Evan McCall, and I have a very special guest with me. Would you care to introduce yourself?
My name is Evgeny Sigal, and I'm the CTO of Snag Delivery.
And for those who don't know, what is Snag Delivery? What do you guys do?
I like to think of Snag Delivery as a convenience store on wheels. So it is a delivery app primarily targeted to college students, and it was founded by UCSB students.
Amazing. And through your time, because you're the CTO, what have been like some of your most significant contributions to the company so far?
So I built the customer app that we currently have. So when I joined Snag, we had a no-code app that was kind of limited, and so I joined and actually was hired for the purpose of rebuilding the app. And then we also have fully vertically integrated stack for internal store management, inventory, basically the delivery app for drivers. And throughout the journey, I discovered that, well, not surprisingly, but at scale, even simple things like delivering things that get ordered, there's a lot of complexity and details, surprising amount of complex details that are involved, such as making sure that the inventory is accurate. That's a hard problem. Scheduling drivers, that's a hard problem. Speaking of drivers, one thing to be clear, what differentiates Snag from other competitors that you may have used is the quick delivery time.
And real quick, who would you say are some of your direct competitors?
So GoPuff, some students are probably familiar with Duffel, which was very similar to us, also targeted at college students. And so to get back to this, what differentiated us from GoPuff is using electric bikes and scooters for delivery. We employ our own drivers, and we manage our own stores and inventory. So today Snag is open at 11 campuses and growing.
Wow. And so basically from how you described it, the first version of Snag was functional, but it just needed to be fleshed out and be made into something that's more usable. I attended a talk you went to where you gave the analogy, if someone 3 beers deep can't go online and order a snack, then it's too complicated.
So this is actually the 3 beer test I like to kind of a concept. So when you're building an app, when you're building a user experience like an interface, it has to be simple enough to where the test is like this. Find a friend, have them drink 3 beers. If they can still use the app fluently, it's good enough. And usually it's a concept, so we don't really do that. But whenever we discuss about certain workflows and certain screens, I bring that up. I thought it was a funny concept, but it kind of is understood by everybody.
Right. Because going back to one of the talks that you had that I attended, it seemed like at first there was like 4 pages and the pages were all full of all these items and there was these different choices and you were basically like, no one knows what the hell to do. There's so many choices and you sort of simplified it and streamlined it. And
so that was talking about simplicity. So there's elegance in making something as simple as possible where it still serves the core function, but it's not cluttered.
got it. So basically you feel like simplicity is one of the cornerstones of like a good user interface. Like how, when you're making these decisions, do you ultimately decide like what changes do you want to introduce to the app to make it better?
Yes, so we do a lot of that, and generally the idea is there's another saying that I like. Perfection is achieved not when there is nothing. Sorry.
I know what you're trying to say, but basically,
Oh
is
yeah, when
this
there's nothing left to remove.
right? So, like, and is this in terms of like when you're adding things? Is this based on user feedback or like your own experiences using the app, or how do you like ultimately arrive at these decisions?
So it's a combination of things. So it's user feedback. It's a lot of discussions among the team, the stakeholders, the co-founders. We do a lot of kind of on the ground intelligence. So we talk to the store managers, we talk to the drivers, we talk to people who are interacting with the customers. We try to get as much feedback as possible. And in general, a lot of it is centered around trying to give the best customer experience.
But in all of those answers, it seems like the commonality is talking to people. It's a decision made by your users, your employees, and all the rather. It's not something that is like solely stored in your own head or your own
No, yeah,
opinions.
it's not a top-down kind of authoritative dictatorship. No.
Got it. And on that note, how many employees would you say that you manage?
So right now, actually, I prefer as small team as possible. So I'm more of a individual contributor than a manager. So right now, I only have 2 direct reports, but we are hiring for internship positions, and our internship is a bridge program where for a software developer, after their internship, we basically try to uplift them to become
I
full
see.
time.
Bring them on. And what do you look for in an employee?
So, to be a good engineer, I think you have to kind of think not just in the engineering realm, but also outside of it as a product builder. So, think about the customer experience, be able to understand the customer. Another important, well, kind of common sense, but ability to learn quickly, because a lot of the things you can't really learn many of the things in college. I think like probably over 90% of the things you learn throughout your life and your career is outside of college. Once you go out there and start building things, working at companies, etc.
So you sort of, so basically, like they need to be a good engineer, obviously, if they're in tech, but they also need to have a sort of a human element to them. Like they need to know what people like.
Yes, so there's a balancing act between good engineering and good business, and sometimes they're actually at odds with each other, because um, good engineering that you learn at school, um, you learn to be probably like very neat. It depends on schools, that depends on professors, but there's certain kind of understanding. But then you start working in the real world, and a lot of the times those rules get broken or thrown out, and sometimes it's surprising, but also it kind of makes sense. And if you look, there's a lot of very successful products out there, open source products. If you look at their source code, it's a garbled mess, but they're highly successful because a lot of people use them and get a lot of value from them. I could probably give examples. So
Sure, that'd be great.
MySQL database server, open source product. I wouldn't say it's kind of like by the book source code. There's and this is not like this is not intended as offense to MySQL or anything like that. It's a great product. There's other ones, but again, it's not like it's not like I'm giving those examples in bad light or anything. It's the other way around. I think they're great products, but it's an example where you focus on the features and things like that, and building fast and creating value.
I see. And then moving on to just sort of Snag in general, at the time of this recording, it's the start of 2025. What goals do you have for Snag in 2025 in terms of revenue, new customers, and other
New
categories?
customers for sure. So we are experimenting with improving our referral system, better referral rewards, and things like that. There are things that you'll see coming out soon if you're a Snag customer. That should be coming out in the next couple updates.
Okay, great. And what is the most amount of revenue that you've experienced that Snag has generated in 1 year?
So we're highly seasonal because we follow the school years. So I could give you like roughly a month. I think we've approached close to 1 million. Yep.
1 million a month. And like when you first arrived at Snag, do you have any idea of how much they were generating then?
I think maybe 700 over a whole year or so.
Wow. So from 700 grand over a whole year to $1 million in just a month. For you being the CTO, like what is one thing or one idea that you have implemented that you think has driven that increase of revenue?
Quality of service was a major focus early on to make sure that between customer placing an order and the items getting delivered, again, as I mentioned, there's a lot of complexity involved. You have to make sure that it's delivered as fast as possible, but the things that happen, the sequence of events that happen between customer placing an order is the store receives it, somebody has to pack it, so we have shelves with thousands of items. They have to quickly find it, place the right items into the bags. For example, items sometimes appear very similar, and it's very easy to pick the wrong item. You have to make sure that the inventory is tracked accurately, because if somebody orders but the item is out of stock, right? That's a bad customer experience. So there was a lot of focus on that. On the operations side, on the kind of back end, not from the systems perspective, but
Right.
Store management, store operations.
Like literally all of the food you have in stock, making sure it's correctly counted and the right things are getting shipped
Exactly.
out.
And then on the other side, of course, the app itself has to be well polished, work great, cover all the edge cases. There's complexity in things like, let's say there's a big blog party, or like we have, right, Deltopia, right? Cell phone networks get overwhelmed
Right.
during those events. So you have to build apps that can be resilient to that. And not just on the customer side, but also on the driver side. So there's a lot of complexity involved there at scale.
I see. And what's one of the challenges that you've felt or like had to overcome while you're continuing to scale Snag?
Prioritizing all these things and making sure that we work on the right things, that we spend the focus on the right stuff. That's always a challenge, because you want everything to be perfect, but sometimes you have to really, pick the right stuff, because as a startup, you have limited resources, limited time, limited engineering person power. So you really have to prioritize carefully.
Got it. Okay, so choosing kind of what to focus on, because I'm working on my own startup right now, and I just know there's a million things you could focus on, and once you fix one thing, 5 other issues pop up. So
yeah.
that
That's
makes
a major
sense.
challenge,
Prioritizing the right things, right? And
Exactly.
and how do you find these right things?
There are several kind of tools you can use. One of them was actually I learned from working with Kevin O'Connor, who was founder of DoubleClick, and then he was CEO of Graphic here at Santa Barbara. So I worked there for a few years, and he had a method called brainstorm priority technique. You can Google it online. It's really actually simple and effective, and it's around the idea of brainstorming, and then when a group brainstorms, and it's usually diverse groups, so in the case of Snag, it would be store operators, store managers, and even sometimes drivers, interns. And then everybody gets, depending on how many ideas you have, you divide it, and then everybody gets like a limited number of votes, and then some time to vote, and then you use that as a guideline. So it helps you kind of figure out what's important, what's the common pain points, what's the recurring theme, and sometimes it helps prioritize things. So that's why it's called priority technique.
Got it. And through all of this advice, I'm just thinking it sounds like the number one thing is like every decision is made as a team. It's not just one person sort of giving their idea and directing it. It's data-driven insights?
Data-driven as well. So it can't be 100% data-driven because a lot of the times you don't have the luxury of having 100% data. Having accurate data is also a hard problem. So a good kind of rule of thumb is if you're like 70% there in terms of data, that's usually good enough.
Okay, 70%. I mean, yeah,
that's a number I've heard before around previous companies I worked at.
Got it. Well, moving on to sort of the next thing, you said you have the skill set to take a company from doing $700,000 a year to $1 million in just a month.
Well,
with
no,
the help
no,
of
not
other
in a month,
people.
meaning like the revenue, revenue in a month. And again, I would not take a credit all to myself in any way, shape, or form. It takes a great team, and the team I worked with. One of the reasons I joined Snag is because I really liked the team when I met them.
Got it. But so what were some of your prior experiences, particularly in Santa Barbara, that led you to develop the skill set to then be such an asset to your current team at Snag?
So I joined Snag after Amazon. Here at Santa Barbara, I worked at Amazon Alexa information team. And Alexa information team, I joined Alexa information team as part of an acquisition of Kevin Connor's company, Graphic. So that's a whole other story, but and the building in Santa Barbara, the Amazon building, a lot of Alexa team was there, but part of the reason that the building is there was because Graphic got acquired, and then Amazon moved our Graphic office downtown to Santa Barbara.
And what was some of the stuff you were doing for them?
Mostly infrastructure, cloud infrastructure, things like that, DevOps stuff, and kind of system level stuff. So we were building a knowledge graph before we got acquired, and this was, I think I joined in 2013. So we were building fairly large data sets for that time, billions of data points, and that required a lot of infrastructure and kind of managing, automating scripts and designing the architecture behind it.
And for the dummies like me who might not be as well versed in software operations, like on kind of like a tangible level, like how is that benefiting the company?
So I think the most benefit in terms of like my prior experience, so I would say my experience at Amazon, I learned a lot at Amazon, and I actually would recommend, I wouldn't say like anybody, there's no companies for everybody, but it's a great experience to be part of, because they operate at scale. For example, in the cloud or in logistics, even in the cloud, there's just no other place on the planet where you could see operations at that scale. And then in terms of business philosophy, the leadership principles, I think I learned a lot from there, like customer obsession. And any company can use actually Amazon's principles. if you read about it, I think if you Google like can we use Amazon's leadership principles, like I think somewhere on the site already, yeah, it's like public data, it's
Got it.
public information. Yeah, like nobody's gonna stop. Like
Right,
they
right,
don't
right.
they don't they don't have claims to that. Yeah, just create it. I don't know. But anyway, so that was probably a good kind of fit, and because it's also retail, and Snag is a retail. I like to think of it as a real-time retail because we only have 10 minutes to deliver, so there's a lot of real-time elements to um, processing orders.
Wow, 10 minutes. That's pretty.
Yeah,
That's quick.
that's the goal, and we achieve that by using electric scooters, by having the what's called dark stores, so the warehouses that are small and nearby.
Wow. Yeah, between figuring out the order, who's gonna take it, putting it in the bag, delivering it, finding the apartment. I mean, that's a monumental achievement.
Yeah,
And that's
like
crazy.
other actually that reminds me. So there are challenges. For example, like there's geospatial challenges because a lot of the apartment buildings they have many doors but one address, and that data just doesn't exist in a lot of the Google Maps data sets, etc. If you really zoom into like a dorm building, it's not going to always show every door, every entrance, things like that. So there's a lot of interesting challenges. Again, we're hiring interns now. Of course, at the time of recording of this video, I can't promise that the situation doesn't change. Companies have open positions, sometimes they don't have open positions, but at least as of this time, January 2025, we are.
Yeah. And what are some of the positions just for people watching? Because I'd love to, link to, a recruiting page or whatever if they're interested.
So they would be listed on snagdelivery.app for the most up-to-date information. But at this time, the engineering group at Snag is hiring for software engineer, interns, and full-time software founding engineers. Again, it's best to check the site for the most up-to-date information.
Right. Right. And that's actually a perfect segue because I also like to end this off at just like finding the most powerful themes or most powerful principles that you followed in your career for that other people who are aspiring entrepreneurs or they want to make their own apps or be executives for another company. What has been like one of the most successful piece of advices that you have followed that's allowed you to get to where you are today?
I think customer obsession is probably one of my favorites because when you focus on bringing value to customers, everything else kind of resolves itself. If you use that as like a litmus test, as a benchmark, that's one of them. The other one is never stop learning. So there is kind of a common theme, especially in like mid-career, late career, or eventually after you graduate, people tend to sometimes stop learning new things. It's not always bad. Sometimes you become a domain expert in some domain, and that can be valuable, sometimes statistically even more valuable than being an expert at many different things at lesser depth. But also in technology, sometimes what happens is technologies become obsolete. So it's important to always kind of keep an eye out for where the industry is moving, where the tools are moving, and various solutions.
So being vigilant of like the trends.
Yes, and the other thing is from the engineering perspective, simplicity. So simplicity and elegance is not just from like UI user experience, but the engineering architectures. So the industry seems to be kind of polarized. There was a word for that, I think, merchants of complexity, like people who like to well, they like interesting engineering problems, and they tend to we tend to sometimes get carried away by engineering problems and then making things more complex, like throwing exciting tools, exciting technologies into the mix, but then you have to kind of manage all this diversity of technologies. And but on the other side, it goes back to simplicity, like perfection where there is nothing else left to take away. And that's the, and I've seen examples of where this works. So one of my coworkers and friends, Dylan Winslow, who runs ImageFlip, the meme site, and now also Guava Health, had really very simple tech stack, and it worked really well. Other examples, kind of famous examples like Basecamp, when I read about Basecamp, simple stacks, and that's another kind of part of it.
Got it. Great. Well, I think we'll be wrapping this up soon. This has been great having you on.
Thank you for having me.
Just wondering if you have any closing remarks as if you were talking to yourself 20 years ago.
20 years ago. Well, I would have advised myself to kind of join startups much earlier. Yeah, that's... buy Bitcoin.
Buy Bitcoin. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, great. Well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much for being a part of it.
Thank you.
And guys, thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, make sure to hit subscribe down below. If you want to see more content like this, I'd love to bring other special guests on, just so you guys, if you want to do something, if you want to be a CTO of some other company someday, maybe stick around and you'll hear something that'll appeal to you. But yeah, anyways, thank you again for coming on. This has been fun.